Once you have your parts designed, then we have to go through the machining process in the CAM tab. So your model should look just like this if you follow the design specs. We'll click the CAM tab right here, and then you have to go to the setup process. So click Setup, and I'm going to actually change the orientation here by clicking Tool Isometric, and that changes it to look sort of in this orientation. And so I would suggest that you rotate your box and make it look like this here. We're going to take, without clicking anything else, take this dot, and we actually want it to be down in this corner. So I click this corner, it moves it down there. I now need to make sure that Z is facing up, in this case it is, and I need Y to actually face along this axis here. So to do that, if we click the stem, not the pointer, the stem, and then we say we want to go perpendicular to this edge, then you can see it's now on this line, but it's going the wrong way. So now if I click the arrow, the little pointer, it reverses. So now I have everything facing the right direction, Z up, Y in this direction, X in this direction. And that's the orientation of the router, X, Y, and Z coordinates. So that's why we have to make it this way. We don't need to worry about this down here right now because we're setting up the X, Y, Z for the router. So that should be set. Now we go to stock, and you can see there's a brown box kind of around this. It's a little bit bigger. They're adding material. We don't want to do that. We have a relative size box with no additional stock. We want it to be the exact height of this thing here. And we're just going to cut it out of this piece exactly as it is. So that is everything we need. Now, as far as post-process, your program name or number, you should just put your name. Mr. Thomas is my name. And then click OK. And now you have your setup. Once your setup is done, we have to go through the machining process for each one of these. So we're going to start by doing 2D pocket. Pocket just means cut out the inside areas of these. So I'll click 2D pocket, and I'm going to select the tool that I want, and I'll click Tool, and this opens your tool library. I want you to just minimize these, and you'll see we have basically two different libraries and some holders. These are the holders, these things on the top. Click ShopBot Router, because we're using the ShopBot. And we're going to end up using a 1/2" flat. So you should click the 1/2" flat. It's probably in the same location here. If it's not, just make sure you have the 1/2" flat end mill. And click Select. And then it automatically sets your spindle speeds and all of your information. That's all preset. Now we're going to go to the next one, which is the geometry pocket selection. And we're going to select this pocket and this pocket. We're going to have it mill out or pocket out both of those. The next tab is the passes tab, so click on that one, and you want to deselect stock to leave. We don't want to leave any additional stock. You do want to click multiple depths. This says that you're going to go down a depth of whatever this distance is every time you cut a layer out. You can't cut this entire thing out all at once. You'll probably break the bit. So right now, it's only going down 0.04. We can go down half of the thickness of the bit. So it's a 1/2" bit, half of that is 0.25. And we'll do the same thing for our finishing. And then the last one we do is we go over here to the linking tab, and there is a ramp. And ramp is simply when it drills down into this, it's going to go down in kind of a circular fashion so that it doesn't go straight down and plunge down into it. It kind of works its way in. If you have a really tough material, you might want to go at a very shallow angle, a 2°. Our wood is relatively soft, so we're going to do a 10° angle and then hit OK. And now it's going to show you the path. You can see that ramp, that spiral as it goes down for each individual layer. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to contour. Contour just means trace the edge of this. So we're going to contour, oops, right here, 2D contour. And we got to choose our tool. And it looks like my 1/2" flat is still selected, so I'm good there. If it's not, you got to go back and select that, just like in the last part. And we're going to contour this right there. You got to make sure to hit that edge, not the top edge, because you want to cut down into it. Then we go over to our passes tab, and we have multiple depths. And again, we want to go down a maximum of 1/4" inch per time. We're just going to set that as 1/4" inch every time. It's going to always be half of that. And then the last thing we need to do is just click OK. We don't have to do anything with our lead-ins or ramp on this one. And you'll see the contour there. And it's just going to take 2 passes down. just given our depth. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to do a contour around the bottom edge so that we actually cut this thing out, because we're starting with material that's a lot bigger than this. We're starting with a giant sheet, and we're going to cut the whole thing out. So we're going to contour both of those. And this time, we got to go back to our tool. It still says 1/2 inch flat. We're good there. We go to tabs. And on this one, we want to add a tab on each side. So it's not going to cut here, here, or on that far side. If it did, the whole thing would pop out. So we want to leave a little bit of material there. We're going to make our height for this 0.05. So there's very little thickness for that tab right there. Next, we go to our heights tab. We're actually going to do something with it this time. We want to do a bottom offset of -0.01. That means it's going to cut 1/100 of an inch lower. It's going to contour that much lower than the bottom of this box, and that will just make sure that we're cutting into the spoil board, which is underneath this, and that's okay to do on the router, just to make sure we cut all the way around this piece. Now let's go over to our passes, and again, just like we did before, we have multiple depth, and it's 0.25, and we have finishing as 0.25 also, and then our last one we don't need to do anything with. Again, we click OK, and you can see that it has everything. You can also see where that tab is set right there. So now we're going to actually simulate this. So if you click Setup and we do Simulate, then you can show the stock right here. If you click the stock button, it gives you a few different options for colorization and different things like that. So I set my mode to standard and my colorization to operation, and then I click play, and it's going to show you cut this whole thing out. If you hover over this, it shows the amount of time, the machining time to actually do all of these different processes. So we'll click play, and we can speed this up. And that is what your end product should be. Then I need you to screenshot this, and you're going to put this on the report itself. After you screenshot it, then we have to post-process. We have to turn this into G&M code so that we don't have to handwrite it. So we click that, and your processor configuration, you have two options, the ProLite 1000 mil, and then we have the ShotBot router. The router is the big giant one. So we're going to choose that one, and we're going to should be your program name, should be yours. So I call mine Mr. Thomas. You might want to just call it like container, and then post it. And so this is going to make sure you have this saved in a place where you can access it. And you'll have to actually take this onto a thumb drive back into the router. So we're going to save it to your documents folder or something. And when you're done, it's going to look something like this. It's showing you all the code. So all of those different lines of code. And it's a little bit different for this machine, which is why some of the letters and configurations don't look the same. But I love Menchie's. You can see you have an X, a Y, and a Z coordinate, so it's moving all around. This is telling it to turn the spindle on. This is telling it what the speed of the spindle will be. And so this shows you all of the code. So if we scroll down, you can see you have a lot of lines of code. This is 1,214 lines of code that you would have had to hand write, but this did it all for you. Yay for CAM. At this point, that file is saved. You should be ready to bring it to the router, and you're ready to mill this thing out. Menchie. I love Menchie. I love